Story 1. Not dating in high school and college has made it incredibly harder now in my mid-30s. There are fewer options available compared to when I was in college. Most people my age are already married, and those who are single seem to prefer staying that way. There isn't much left for me. Story 2. My brother punched me in the face and laid me out on the sidewalk when I tried to get him in a car after his 21st birthday night out. My parents urged me not to file a police report, even though I desperately wanted to. Now, 5 years later, he is in federal prison for much worse crimes. I often wonder if I had had him arrested that night, if he would have been scared straight and not caused so much damage to our lives. Story 3. Listening too much to what family and society think a woman should do, such as marrying and having children. I have made my bed now. Story 4. I brought on a business partner who ultimately put me out of business with a significant amount of bad debt. He started a side business without informing me and got into serious financial trouble but never mentioned it. One day, during a planning meeting with our second largest client, he got up from the conference room table and never returned. He had declared bankruptcy without notifying me, found a job in another city, and loaded a van to move away. I learned about the move the next day when he emailed me from the road. I discovered the bankruptcy when I attempted to access my line of credit for the first time to buy out his shares, only to find out that my company's credit was locked due to his bankruptcy. My company, which I had spent 8 years building to $5 million in billings, was gone in a matter of months. That was 24 years ago. To this day, if I am driving down the road and that person steps in front of my car, I will not remove my foot from the accelerator. Story 5. I moved back home from the other side of the country for a job working for a family friend. I was laid off 6 months later. I'm still trying to recover financially, and I'm stuck in my boring home state. Scott, you have caused me a lot of frustration. Story 6. I decided to go for a run 12 years ago. An intoxicated driver put me into an 11-and-a-half-day coma in the intensive care unit. I suffered a traumatic brain injury, a broken sternum, a broken skull, and a broken shoulder. I have not been able to taste or smell anything in over 12 years. Story 7. Getting back together with an ex can be challenging. We both hoped we could start fresh. However, anyone who has tried it knows that, within weeks, you may find yourself right back where you were when the relationship ended the first time. When the time comes to leave, just walk away quietly and don't make any fuss. Story 8. I will receive a lot of negative consequences if I answer this, but I will anyway. When I was 18, I took a drink of drain cleaner. It was a poor excuse for a suicide attempt and more of a scare tactic than anything. The worst decision of my life was not drinking the entire container. Story 9. I have a pretty good middle-class life right now. I don't think I've ever made a bad decision. However, if I could go back and change anything, I would like to have been more empathetic and kinder to people when I was younger. I wasn't cruel, but I could have been more considerate at times. Story 10. Telling my gifted children their intelligence quotients was a mistake. Drinking again after 15 years of sobriety is another regret. These are the first that come to mind. There are more. I have a beautiful life and I'm happy, but I would do almost everything differently as long as I could have the same husband and children. Story 11. Taking that exciting startup opportunity for 30% less pay. It turns out unlimited paid time off means working on Christmas Eve in a shared office bathroom stall. Story 12. Walking to the convenience store and buying a vape. I was very sheltered as a child due to health issues. One day, my cousin came over with a cannabis vape. I felt embarrassed that I couldn't use the vape without coughing, so my idea was to practice by vaping. 6 years later, I am still addicted to nicotine. Story 13. Going back to graduate school to become a teacher only to discover I absolutely did not want to be a teacher. In the end, I completed graduate school with $40,000 in debt and no credential. Story 14. Not managing my money correctly. I paid off all my debt before I moved out in 2020, and then it got out of control again. Story 15. I left my job at Starbucks, which I didn't like, for the first position that offered me a role. It turned out to be with a non-profit organization that was being audited and heavily scrutinized by the state. They omitted that detail during the interview process. They also had the employee I was replacing train me and didn't inform her that she was being let go, only stating that I was coming in to help. This was a major red flag that I ignored in the name of leaving my barista job. I couldn't improve the situation, and they terminated my employment a little after 4 months, effectively throwing me under the bus. This experience ruined my confidence for an extended period. Story 16. Listening to loud music while wearing earphones, ignoring my phone's volume warnings, resulted in damage to my eardrums and permanent tinnitus. There are several poor decisions I could mention, but none are as consistently obvious every day. Story 17. I did not start to transition when I first understood my identity, instead repressing it for nearly 20 years after that moment. This experience revealed who truly cared about me and who was only offering lip service or conditional acceptance. Story 18. I ghosted a close friend because I was upset with her. That was almost 25 years ago, and I really miss her, but she refuses to talk to me. Karma can be harsh. Story 19. Having a child with a narcissist is challenging. I absolutely love my child more than anything, but I do wish he had a different father. Story 20. Staying in the same house with my abusive father has contributed to my lack of self-esteem and depression. I am glad that it is now in the past. Story 21. My first marriage was a nightmare. Although I have amazing children from that marriage, I later married an incredible man. He proposed after less than 2 weeks of dating. Story 22. Working in retail for too long became a trap. I thought I wasn't good enough for anything else. I hated work and life, each year worse than the last. I was also constantly broke. Story 23. Going to college immediately without taking a couple of years to mature, earn money, and explore my options is what I initially wanted. However, my parents said I would be on my own if I chose that path. On the other hand, if I hadn't made that decision, it's unlikely I would have met my partner and had my daughter. Story 24. I will copy it from my other thread, but for me it was letting my girlfriend go to a party in our teens on her own. She was adamant, and I couldn't convince her otherwise. She was sexually assaulted by a man almost double our age, and I will never forgive myself for allowing it to happen when my intuition was so sure it was a bad idea. If anything, I am much more firm about trusting my instincts like this now. However, I am in agony over it even 9 years later. She is doing okay, but her trust in men has been perhaps rightfully damaged. Story 25. I didn't go traveling or working in my 20s and moved in with my boyfriend. I can't believe I let him talk me out of it. Story 26. Joining the army. I should have waited on the wait list to join the Air Force, which has higher living and basic standards. Story 27. Bleaching my hair was a mistake. I should have never listened to everyone telling me I looked better as a blonde when I was clearly washed out. Now I'm trying to grow my hair out, and it's taking forever. It just reached my shoulders, and it's been over a year. Story 28. Selling a house right before the market surged. I could have made much more money if I had waited. Story 29. I got married at 22. I went into debt and used alcohol to cope with depression. I moved to another state to leave it all behind, only to find out that depression follows you. However, getting divorced at 23 was the best decision I made. I am in a much better place now at 40. I refer to those years as the dark days. Story 30. Honestly, I should have valued my life as a child. Once I realized my family members were truly narcissistic, I understood where this was heading. I stayed because I thought life would improve. I believed I would eventually achieve something meaningful, and I did, but they destroyed every opportunity one had. Now I am just waiting for them to pass away or trying to save enough money to leave and start over at 30. Even if I only live another decade, I refuse to endure the presence of these individuals any longer. Story 31. Everything. It doesn't matter what choice I make. I end up wishing I had done something else or not done anything at all. Story 32. Not sitting with Tiffany at lunch. I could have been part of the friend group I have been wishing to join since 7th grade. Story 33. I moved several states away to live with a woman I met while we were both patients in a mental health facility. Story 34. Do not eat tuna fish from a gas station or dollar store unless you want to regret it. Story 35. I turned down a great job at the Federal Reserve Bank for a position at an investment bank. I walked away from an excellent Federal Reserve job with incredible pension and benefits for a shiny new opportunity. What a mistake. They don't teach this in school, but they should. Story 36. I am intentionally procrastinating to improve myself because I feel a fear of missing out on my youth. Now, I am finally getting fully established at the age of 35. Story 37. Instead of moving out when my friend offered me a place to stay, I remained in an abusive situation for almost a full year longer in an attempt to save money to buy a car. My mother secretly put the car in her name, so I ended up thousands of dollars in debt, essentially buying my abusive mother a car instead of beginning my recovery a year earlier. Story 38. I regret not pursuing the things I wanted in life earlier due to my parents not approving of my choices. I am really glad I broke free from needing their validation, though I wish it had happened sooner. Story 39. Working for my brother and his wife, attempting to build a life with my childhood sweetheart, and using meth are my top 3 biggest mistakes. There was a great deal of unpleasantness with those decisions, but fortunately, none of those nightmares are part of my life anymore. Story 40. I asked my best friend for support while starting treatment after deciding not to follow through with my plan. Story 41. I had so many questions my entire life that I wanted to ask my mother when I was finally reunited with her. I regret nothing more now, knowing that they will forever remain unanswered because I was too scared to ask. Story 42. I decided to change careers instead of looking for a less toxic workplace. I wasted so much money on college, and 10 years later, I am trying to return to my original career. Story 43. I regret not accepting a traineeship offered to me in my 20s. I thought being fully qualified would be enough to secure a job, so I declined the opportunity, even though it would have eventually led to paid employment. Turns out my qualifications meant nothing without experience, but people wouldn't hire me, which made it difficult to gain that experience. I'm still upset with myself for that decision. Story 44. I focused on fulfilling expectations instead of pursuing my desires. I spent too much time worrying about what others would think. Story 45. Leaving my hometown after college when I wasn't ready was challenging. I made many mistakes as an adult and am still facing the consequences. However, the silver lining is that I have learned a lot through these experiences. Story 46. Getting married too young, not selling a piece of land when I had the best offer, thinking it would be worth more. Story 47. Cheating never made me feel good. I was reaching out instead of looking inward. It is the biggest regret of my life, one that I still live with in shame. I will never forgive myself for the pain I caused. Story 48. Not addressing my anxiety, which was actually ADHD sooner, caring too much about what others think. Story 49. Moving out of my parents' house and getting an apartment with a close friend has turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. I definitely learned the hard way. Story 50. Not physically confronting certain individuals in my late teens because I was too nice and naive. Additionally, pulling all my retirement investments out of the markets just before COVID was a smart decision. The worst decision was not reinvesting after the markets bottomed out. Furthermore, dealing with an addiction to alcohol. Story 51. Palaging tambay sa computer shop. Imbes na mag-ipon para sa pag-top up at makabili ng in-game purchases, masyadong kampante sa kolehiyo. Story 52. I am downloading Kick on my new phone now. I wasn't allowed to turn my phone off or lower the volume, and I had to hand it in at night. I had just downloaded Kick before bed, 2 hours after getting my new phone, and a number of people spammed me with inappropriate images. My parents tried to turn off my phone to stop the notifications and discovered the messages. However, the main issue was the 48-year-old man from Australia I was regularly communicating with. They called the police, which drastically changed my life. You may be wondering why I don't regret talking to this man initially. I felt it was under control. I wasn't naive. I wasn't going to meet him or send him explicit images or do anything reckless. We mostly talked about history. I would have ended the relationship myself at some point, and everything would have been fine. Story 53. Going to the woman who raised me for almost anything felt like a Faustian bargain. Story 54. I gave up on that Bitcoin drip after collecting 1 Bitcoin every day for weeks and realizing it was still worth less than 10 cents. So, I formatted the USB drive wallet that held about 16 Bitcoins, worth about 1.3 million today. Story 55. I downloaded the Bitcoin wallet app back in 2009. I sat at my computer, staring at a little button that said Mine. I clicked it, and it started doing something that slowed my computer down. I became nervous, so I stopped, closed the app, and deleted it. I wasn't sure if I was getting a virus. Story 56. Married a woman with breast implants, thinking live and let live. That was the first sign. I now know that if she harms herself, I should remove myself from her life. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.